October 1720. Off the coast of Jamaica. It was supposed to be just another quiet sunrise on the sea. But this morning, there was screaming. Smoke rose from a battered pirate sloop. Blood stained the deck. And standing tall was a woman in torn breeches, a pistol still warm in her hand. Her name was Anne Bonny. Less than an hour earlier, British soldiers stormed their ship. Her crew surrendered, but Anne, she refused. She fought back, alone. She screamed at the cowards hiding below. And when the guns fell silent, the sea was still, but her rage wasn't. How did a wealthy daughter from Ireland become the Caribbean's most feared pirate? What happened after her trial shocked even her enemies? This is not fiction. Subscribe to Unbelievably True Story and watch to the end, because Anne Bonny's story is darker than any legend. Cork, Ireland. March 8th, 1697. The streets were grey. Cold wind blew in from the sea. And inside a quiet house near the edge of town, a girl was born who never should have been. Her name was Anne Bonny. Her birth was a secret, a shameful one. Anne's father, William Cormac, was a wealthy lawyer. Her mother, Mary Brennan, was his maid. William was married. Mary wasn't. And when the town found out what he had done, everything changed. People spat when William walked by. Clients stopped calling. His wife left him. His business collapsed. So William did something bold. He packed up everything and left Ireland behind. He took Mary and baby Anne. They sailed far across the ocean to the wild American colonies, to a place called Charlestown, today known as Charleston, South Carolina. At first, it looked like they'd made a clean escape. William started over. He became a merchant, buying and selling goods from ships. They said he wore fancy clothes, acted like a gentleman, and lied about Anne. He told people she was his niece. No one asked questions. And for a while, life was good. Anne grew up in a big house. She wore fine dresses, ate well, learned to read and write. But Anne wasn't like other girls. She didn't want to sit still, or sew, or smile politely. She wanted more. Even as a child, Anne had a temper. One story says that when she was just 13, a servant insulted her. Anne didn't cry. She stabbed the girl with a kitchen knife. Another tale says a boy tried to kiss her at church. Anne waited until no one was looking, then hit him with a candlestick. But her father didn't stop her. He was proud. He said she was spirited. But townspeople began to whisper again. And when Anne grew older, the whispers turned to fear. At 16, Anne did the one thing her father couldn't forgive. She fell in love. Not with a gentleman, not with a rich suitor, but with a poor sailor, a wanderer. A man named James Bonny. James had no land, no fortune, just a sharp smile and pirate dreams. Anne married him in secret. When William found out, he lost his mind. He screamed. He cursed her. He called James worthless. Then he did something cruel. He cut her off completely. No money. No help. No name. Anne had nothing. But Anne didn't cry. She packed her things. And with James, she set sail for the Bahamas. To a strange, dangerous place called Nassau. Nassau wasn't like any city on earth. It wasn't ruled by kings or churches or laws. It was ruled by pirates. They called it the Pirate Republic. A wild island full of outlaws, thieves, drunks and killers, where stolen gold flowed like water and blood spilled just as fast. Anne walked off the ship wearing a man's coat and boots. She never looked back. In Nassau, James Bonny made a living by betraying pirates. He snitched for the governor, collecting bounties for captured men. Anne hated him for it. So she started going out alone, drinking, listening, watching. In one tavern, she met an infamous man, Captain John Rackham, They called him Calico Jack. He was bold, charming, flashy. He wore fine clothes made of calico silk and had a reputation for stealing ships and hearts. He saw Anne and smiled. Anne stared back, fearless. He made a joke. She didn't laugh. He bought her a drink. She drank it down. That night, something changed. Anne wasn't a girl anymore. She was a spark waiting to catch fire. And Jack, he was the flame. Anne and Jack began meeting in secret. They drank. They danced. They planned. Jack offered her a place on his ship, a life at sea, a chance to become something more. But there was one problem. She was still married. James found out. Furious, he tried to bring her back, but Anne refused, so James went to the governor. He demanded that Anne be punished, even whipped in public. Anne and Jack heard the news and ran. They stole a small ship and vanished into open waters. Anne Bonny was no longer a merchant's daughter or a sailor's wife. She was a pirate, and her name would soon become a curse whispered on the wind. A dark ship slices through the waves. A full moon above. Silent stars. Black sails ripple in the wind. On the deck, a woman stands alone. Her hair is wild. Her pistol loaded. Her eyes burning with fury. She's wearing a man's coat, a sword at her hip, and in the shadows behind her, men wait for orders. She turns to them, smiled and whispers, "Ready the cannons!" The storm has begun. Caribbean Sea. Summer. 1718. The water was hot, the air thick with salt, and a stolen ship drifted slowly between two quiet islands, its sails torn, its deck blood-stained. At the wheel stood Anne Bonny. Behind her, the infamous pirate, Calico Jack Rackham. They had nothing but a fast ship, a few weapons, and a plan. They were heading back to the one place no crown could touch them. The harbour was loud. Men shouted. Guns fired. Drunken singing echoed through the sand streets. Ships with torn flags sat shoulder to shoulder. Dutch, Spanish, French, English, all stolen. This was the Pirate Republic. No kings, no law, just gold, rum and knives. Anne stepped off the ship in men's boots, her red hair tucked under a wide hat. She kept one hand on her pistol, the other on the knife inside her coat. No one knew yet that she was a woman. She liked it that way. Jack Rackham was known in Nassau. He had sailed with Charles Vane, a savage pirate captain who had once tied fire ships to his enemies and watched them burn. But Jack, he was different. He liked money, but he liked charm even more. He wore clean shirts, joked often, and smiled even when he lied. Still, he was dangerous. And now he had Anne at his side. People whispered. Who was this bold, silent boy who followed him like a shadow? Why did Jack treat him with such respect? No one dared ask. Anne didn't stay hidden for long. One night, inside a smoke-filled tavern, a drunk sailor grabbed her from behind. Called her, "Pretty boy," laughed into her ear. Anne didn't flinch. She pulled her knife and drove it into his chest. The man dropped without a scream. Silence fell over the room. Jack raised his mug and toasted. To Anne! And just like that, the truth was out. She wasn't pretending to be a man anymore. She didn't need to. She had earned her place. Jack and Anne couldn't live off small jobs forever, so Jack made a move. He stole a sloop called Revenge, fast, deadly, and perfect for Caribbean raids. With it, they captured merchant ships one after another. Anne stood at the front, sword drawn, coat flapping in the wind. She fought like a devil, cursed louder than the men, hit harder, aimed better. Her name spread fast. They called her the Red Blade. By the end of that summer, Anne Bonny had spilled blood in 3 seas and stolen more gold than most men would see in a lifetime. But trouble was coming. In London, King George was furious. Too many ships lost. Too many pirate attacks. Trade was crumbling. So the king made an offer. a full pardon for pirates if they surrendered by a certain date. Many took the deal. Even Jack, for a short time, pretended to consider it. But Anne laughed. She said, "Why beg for a king's mercy when we already rule the sea?" They turned their backs on the pardon and returned to the waves. From that moment on, they weren't just criminals. They were traitors, and they would be hunted. On one raid, Anne noticed something strange. There was a new crew member, a quiet fighter, slim, fast, with sharp eyes. Something about them seemed familiar. Anne watched the way they moved, the way they hid their voice, their face. One night, after a bloody battle, Anne pulled them aside. They sat together on the lower deck. Anne leaned in and whispered, "You're not a man, are you?" The crew member said nothing. But she took off her shirt and revealed the truth. Her name was Mary Red. She had fought in the army disguised as a man, had survived battles, buried a husband, then joined the pirates to escape poverty. Anne didn't flinch. From that day on, Anne and Mary were inseparable. They shared a room, a bottle, a blade. They fought side by side, fierce, fearless, merciless. Some said they were lovers. Others said they were sisters of war. All anyone knew was that if you saw Anne and Mary boarding your ship, you ran. Men who tried to fight them died with shock in their eyes, killed by women who fought better than any pirate on deck. Together, Anne and Mary earned a nickname, the Devil's Daughters, and back in England, the news caused panic. If even women had turned to piracy, what was left to save? Many pirate ships didn't allow women. They were seen as bad luck, a distraction. But not on the Revenge. On Jack's ship, Anne and Mary were treated as equals, or worse, as leaders. They carried pistols, gave orders, and stared death in the face. But danger was closing in. The Navy was hunting harder now. They sent faster ships, more soldiers, spies. The Crown wasn't just after gold anymore. It wanted Anne Bonny's head. Caribbean Sea, August 1719. The heat was thick, the ocean still. And in the middle of the vast blue sea, the Revenge floated like a ghost. Anne Bonny stood barefoot on the bloody deck. She had just killed a man. He was taller, stronger, armed. But she was faster, smarter, colder. And now, she was more feared than ever. She wasn't just a pirate anymore. She was something else. Power came with a cost. Anne no longer smiled. She no longer flinched at death. Her eyes were hard, her voice sharp, her hands always near her weapons. She didn't care who you were, man, woman, captain, or king. If you crossed her, you bled. And yet, Anne wasn't cruel for fun. She had a code. She protected women prisoners. She showed mercy to poor sailors. But if you lied to her? If you betrayed her? She made sure your death was remembered. For months, Anne, Jack, and Mary ruled the waves. They attacked English sloops, Dutch merchants, even a Spanish galleon once, loaded with gold and silk. They didn't just steal. They humiliated their enemies. They tied up captains and made them sing. They threw rich passengers into the sea wearing nothing but their boots. And Anne laughed through it all. Her name spread from port to port. The woman with fire for hair, the red blade. Death in a dress. But fame brings danger. And they were about to go too far. It was supposed to be a normal raid. A small ship, weak sails, poor crew, but something was wrong. As they approached, the ship didn't run. It waited. Then cannons fired. 3 blasts. Close range. The Revenge shook. Wood split. Men screamed. Anne grabbed Mary and dove behind the mast. When the smoke cleared, they saw the truth. It wasn't a merchant ship. It was a bait trap set by pirate hunters. They had been marked. And now, they were being hunted like animals. The British Crown had finally put a price on Anne's life. £500 for Anne Bonny. Dead or alive. £500 more for Mary Red. That was more than most people made in 10 years. Posters spread through taverns, docks, and ships. Red-haired woman, fierce temper, armed at all times. May disguise herself in men's clothing. Do not approach alone. Everyone wanted the reward. Anne no longer trusted anyone. Every handshake might be a dagger. Every dock might be a trap. And still, she didn't stop. On board the Revenge, there were rules. Jack may have been captain, but Anne was judge. She handled justice. If a man stole, she decided his fate. If two crew members fought, she chose the winner. And if anyone touched her without permission, they disappeared. One sailor made a crude joke. Anne laughed with him. Later that night, she slit his throat while he slept. The crew understood. She wasn't their plaything. She was their commander. But Anne was changing. Too many raids. Too much blood. At night, she sat at the front of the ship, staring into the Black Sea. Jack would try to cheer her, bring her rum, play music. Sometimes she smiled. Sometimes she kissed him. Other nights, she didn't speak. The rage inside her was growing. It had started in Ireland, when they called her a mistake. Grew in Carolina, when her father cast her aside. Now, out here in the open sea, it burned brighter than ever. Mary Red noticed first. The crew was getting restless. Some men were drinking too much, skipping duties, questioning orders. One said Anne had gone soft. The next day, he was thrown overboard. But the cracks were showing, and Jack was slipping too. He drank more. Fought less, talked big, but led small. Mary pulled Anne aside one night. If this ship goes down, she said, we need to survive it. With or without him, Anne nodded. But her heart was breaking. She had once loved Jack, trusted him. But now, she wasn't sure. Then came the storm. 3 days of wind, rain, and terror. The sea roared. Lightning struck the mast. Sails ripped apart. Men were thrown overboard. Anne and Mary tied themselves to the rails. They took turns bailing water, repairing lines, shouting orders. Jack was drunk the whole time. When the storm passed, the crew looked at Anne, not Jack. Anne had saved them. And that night, for the first time, she stood above him. The crew followed her now. She was no longer just a woman on board. She was their true captain. Calm sea, nightfall. The Revenge drifts in silence. Anne stands alone on the upper deck. The wind in her face, a pistol at her side. Behind her, Jack watches, distant, small, unsure. Mary leans on the rail, loading her gun. Suddenly, a flare shoots into the sky from the east. Red light. Bright as fire. A signal. Someone has found them. Anne turns, her face hard. She whispers, "Get ready. We fight tonight. Caribbean waters, October 20th, 1720. Midnight. No moon. Only fire in the sky, a flare rising like a red ghost above the black ocean. Anne Bonny saw it first. Mary loaded her musket. Jack stumbled out, drunk again. Then came the sound. Oars. Many. Fast. Quiet. They were surrounded. The trap had closed. And before sunrise, the sea would drink blood. For weeks, pirate hunters had been tracking the Revenge. They weren't random men. These were royal soldiers. Trained. Paid. Merciless. They didn't want prisoners. They wanted heads. And Anne's was worth more than gold. They'd followed her trail from burned ships to stolen ports, and now they had her cornered. 3 sloops, full of soldiers. Closing in, the sea was calm. But death was coming fast. Hold your fire! Anne stood tall on the deck. She didn't shake, didn't blink. Mary was next to her, rifle raised, heart pounding. Jack! He was passed out behind a barrel, snoring. Anne growled under her breath. Coward! A voice called out from the dark. Surrender now. In the name of the crown. Silence. Then, A single musket fired. Not from the hunters, but from Anne. A bullet sang through the air. One soldier dropped. The war had begun. The air exploded. Shots flew. Steel clashed. Wood splintered. Anne and Mary fought side by side, back to back, like twin shadows. Anne fired her pistol, threw it, pulled a cutlass. Mary stabbed a soldier through the chest, then ducked behind the mast. Screams filled the air. Men fell. Blood sprayed. Still, more soldiers climbed on board. Anne was hit, once in the shoulder. She didn't stop. She fought with one arm. She roared, "This ship is mine." But it was no use. They were outnumbered. And one by one, her crew fell. Then Anne heard it. Chains. From behind her, the sound of manacles. Locks! Shackles! She turned and saw Jack. He had surrendered. And one by one, her crew fell. Then Anne heard it. Chains. From behind her, the sound of manacles. Locks! Shackles! She turned and saw Jack. He had surrendered. On his knees, hands up, giving names, giving maps, giving her away. Anne screamed. She tried to reach him, sword in hand, but a soldier tackled her. They beat her. Hard. Mary tried to help, but was hit with a rifle butt. Blood poured from her head. Anne's last words before everything went black were, "You're not a man. You're nothing." They were chained below deck. Anne. Mary. A few crew who survived. The soldiers laughed as they sailed back to Port Royal. One bragged, "We got the devil woman. She'll swing from the rope." Anne sat still, her hands bleeding, her eyes on fire. Mary was silent. Her face bruised, her lips split. Jack was kept in a separate room, not for safety, but because they feared what Anne might do to him if she saw him again. November 15th, 1720. Port Royal, Jamaica. The court was packed. People climbed windows. Nobles sat in front. Everyone wanted to see the red-haired pirate woman in chains. Anne Bonny walked in slowly, her shoulder still bandaged, her eyes cold as steel. Mary followed, limping. The charges were clear. Murder. Piracy. Theft. Rebellion against the crown. The judge didn't even look at them. "You are to be hanged by the neck until dead." Gasps filled the room. Anne didn't flinch. But then she spoke, and the room went silent. The judge asked if she had anything to say. Anne raised her chin, looked him straight in the eye, and said, "If you had fought like a man, you wouldn't be hanging like a dog." The courtroom froze. Some men laughed nervously. Others were stunned. The judge banged his gavel and called her an evil creature. But Anne didn't care. She had already lost everything. A few days later, something strange happened. Anne and Mary's execution was delayed. The reason? They were pregnant. Both women claimed to be carrying children, which, by law, meant they couldn't be executed yet. Some say it was true. Some say it was a trick. But either way, it worked. They were moved to a women's prison, away from the hangman's noose. And then, without warning, Mary Red died. Fever. Weakness. No help. Anne wept for the first time in months. She banged on the walls, screaming her name. But Mary was gone. And Anne! She vanished. No one knows exactly what happened to Anne Bonny after 1721. Some say she died in prison. Some say her father used his money to buy her freedom. Some say she escaped, changed her name, and lived a quiet life in South Carolina with a new husband, raising children. Others believe she returned to sea, under a different flag, with a new crew, and a new name. But one thing is certain, she was never seen again. Port Royal Prison. 1721. Anne Bonny sits alone in her cell. Outside, the sea crashes against the rocks. She hums a quiet tune, the same one her mother used to sing when she was little. She stares at the moon. A tear rolls down her cheek. Then she smiles. A smile full of fire, of rage, of freedom. And in the morning, her cell is empty. Just a red ribbon tied to the bars. No one saw her leave. No one stopped her. She was a pirate to the end. South Carolina, 1733. A quiet town near Charlestown. A woman walked into the market with a long black shawl. Her hair was hidden. Her accent was strange. But her eyes burned like fire. People called her Miss Anne. She never spoke of the past, never spoke of the sea. But some swore. They saw the edge of a sword under her dress, a flash of old scars when her sleeves rolled up, and once, just once, a gold coin that didn't belong to any country. Was she the lost pirate queen? Or just another ghost, hiding from her own legend? When Anne Bonny vanished from the prison in Port Royal in 1721, no one could explain how. There was no record of a hanging, no burial, no ship departure. She simply disappeared. Some say her wealthy father, William Cormac, pulled strings and paid bribes to get her out quietly. Others claim she was set free by a jailer who had once been a sailor and knew who she was. But no matter the truth, Anne Bonny was gone, and the world was left to guess where she had gone. One theory says Anne changed her name and started over in Charlestown, near her childhood home. Records show that an Anne Clark married a local man in 1721. She had children, lived a quiet life, died at age 84. Was that her? Some say yes, that she hid in plain sight, that the fire inside her had burned out after Mary's death and Jack's betrayal. But those who met her said there was something wild in her silence, like a lion in a cage, a woman who had seen things no one else could understand. But other stories say Anne Bonny never gave up the sea, that she faked her death and returned to piracy with a new name. Some legends claim she sailed with a Spanish crew. Others say she became the captain of a smuggler ship near Cuba. Some swear they saw her leading a band of female raiders in the Keys, all dressed in black, with red scarves tied to their swords. No one ever caught them. No one ever proved it. But whispers of the ghost queen of the sea spread like fire. And Anne's legend grew bigger than her truth. Sailors in the Caribbean told chilling tales. A ship that vanished in fog, only to reappear hours later, stripped and burning. A woman's voice shouting across the sea at night, cursing English ships. Red ribbons tied to floating corpses. Each time, people blamed her. Bonny's back, they'd say. Some claimed to have seen her eyes from another deck, sharp, cold, unblinking. And some said she would only target English vessels. As if she had a score to settle. A war that never ended. In 1742, a box of letters was found in a family attic in Ireland. They were old, water-stained, faded, but 3 of them were signed. A.B. The handwriting matched old prison logs. One letter read, "I will never forgive Jack. He sold us all to save his skin. If I see him again, I'll finish what the rope didn't." Another, "Mary visits me in dreams. We are back on the deck. She is smiling. We are free." And the last, "I am not done. I will never be done. They will remember my name." To this day, the letters are locked away in a private collection, but researchers believe they are real. And that Anne Bonny lived. Some say Jack Rackham didn't die at the gallows, that his execution was staged, that he made a deal with the crown to hunt pirates instead of hanging. Years later, in 1740, a man named Jonathan Radcliffe was found dead in Havana. His throat was cut, his ship burned, and a red ribbon tied around his neck. No one knew who he was, until someone found an old tattoo on his arm. Jar! Could it have been Jack? Could Anne have hunted him down after all those years? No one knows for sure, but it would be the perfect ending. There is one unmarked grave in Charlestown near the old harbour. It sits under a crooked tree. Locals call it the Pirate's Wife. Some say Anne is buried there. Some say her body was brought back after she died at sea. Some say she's not in there at all, and it's just a stone to throw off those looking for her. But every year, on the same night, someone leaves a red ribbon on the grave. No name, no note, just a whisper in the wind. She never died. She just slipped away. Anne Bonny was not a princess, not a myth, not a made-up story. She was real, a girl who chose violence when the world gave her chains. A woman who refused to be silenced. A pirate who didn't ask for mercy and never gave any. She's remembered not just for the blood, but for the fire. For the way she stared into death and smiled, and whether she died quietly or vanished into legend, this is not fiction. Every detail you've heard comes from real trial records, personal letters, and public archives. You can look them up. Anne Bonny truly lived. She truly fought. She truly disappeared. If you're drawn to real stories that stay with you, subscribe now to our Unbelievably True Story. Because every week, we reveal the darkest truths hidden in plain sight. Watch the next story on your screen, or dive into our playlist of true crime and real mysteries. The next one might be even more shocking